Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to the School of Personal Finance. In this week's video, we're going to talk about 403B plans. Now, 403B is a retirement plan typically with nonprofit organizations and also like hospitals and school districts. And they've been in the news a lot recently because one of the big providers out there just got hit with a $50 million fine for providing misleading information on their statements. Basically, they weren't listing out all the fees that were actually charged within the 403B plan. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through how to analyze your own 403B, especially if you are a school teacher. Like, I've worked with teachers for many years in the New York State teacher retirement system, so I'm very familiar with how they work and the different providers, and it is a little bit crazy out there. It's referred to as the Wild Wild West a lot. So in this video, I'm gonna help you try to figure it all out and understand how the plan works and how to see how much you're actually paying in fees, the different providers that are out there, and at least give you some guidance so that you know what questions to ask and how to set it up so that you take full advantage of what the plan has to offer. All right, let's get to it. All right, so real quick before we get started, make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Help me spread the love out there in YouTube land. Also, head over to schoolofpersonalfinance.com and get on my email list. See all the different ways that we could work together as well. All right, so I'm gonna try to give you enough information in this video to educate you and make you dangerous so that you could at least go in and know what questions to ask and be able to recognize different things in your 403B plan. So the plans, they could all be so different from one another. Like, for example, a hospital could look so different than a New York public school teacher's 403B plan. So like with hospitals, you could be lucky where maybe you just have one great provider. Like maybe you have Fidelity or Vanguard in there and you have very low cost index funds and the expenses are very low and it's just very easy to enroll and you have an employer match and there's just nothing else to it. You know, it looks very similar to a 401k plan and that would be great. Unfortunately, most of them don't look that way. Many 403B plans are going to have multiple providers where there's many different companies in there and you have to make a decision on which company to go with. And a lot of the times the expenses and the fees, they could be hidden or they're just all over the place where it's just hard to compare one to the other. It's hard to dig in there. You have to be an investigator to figure out how much you're actually paying inside of the 403B plan. So I'm going to try to help you understand that a little bit. And I'm going to really focus in on educators and the K through 12 marketplace, because that's what's referred to as the Wild Wild West a lot, because it's just so hard to figure out what is going on in these school districts with all these different companies and vendors in there, you know, that are all fighting for your business to enroll you in the 403B plan. So I think it'd be helpful to start with what I perceive to be a good 403B plan. And this goes for 401k plans as well, right? The people who work in school districts who have 403Bs, they should be able to get access to the same kind of stuff that employees get at a 401k plan at a big public company. So here are a couple of things. So the first one is low cost. You shouldn't have to pay, 1.5%, 2% of your account value to have your 403B with a certain institution. If you're paying 2% in fees in your 403B, let's just say that you have $100,000 in your 403B and you're paying 2%, that's $2,000 a year to have that 403B. And it doesn't mean that the funds are managed better than other funds or anything. It's just that's the cost that the company charges to put your money in their funds. So 2% is very high, but the hard thing is a lot of these companies, it's just not easy to find what the fees are and figure out exactly how much you're paying. So the good 403B plan, the first thing is low expense ratios, low costs, low fees to be a participant in the plan. The second thing is going to be the investment options. So you want to have target date retirement funds, low cost index funds, a variety of funds where you're able to build out your own portfolio if that's what you want to do, of having small cap, mid cap, large cap, international, different bond funds in there where you could go ahead and put the pieces together and create your own low-cost portfolio. Now, obviously, an employer match would be great in these plans. For the school districts, there's no employer match in the New York State teacher retirement system. Some hospitals, I've seen some employer matches, some nonprofit organizations, you could have employer matches, but as far as the school districts go, there's no employer match, and that's just the way that it is. The next thing would be a great portal, a great website where you could go in and look at your asset allocation and pull up statements and transactions and rebalance or reallocate funds in there, and it's just very simple to go in and make sense of everything and look at what you have invested in there. Some of these these websites, they're antiquated, they're hard to get into, you can't really see what's going on in there, and it's just not easy to access all the information. So you want that stuff to be easy these days. You want to have it at your fingertips as well. And then finally, having great customer service, right? If your 401k plan or your 403b plan is through Fidelity, where you could just call them, ask them questions, have somebody walk you through things, that's very nice, as opposed to, just having to dial a random 1-800 number and being put on hold and being passed around and nobody really knowing how to get you where you want to go. Some of these old insurance companies, that's the way it is. It's not made very easy. And it's great also when you could have, if you choose to, have a financial advisor that you could work with. Like, yes, you're going to have to pay them. Financial advisors are going to get paid for giving you advice and helping you, but it is good if that's beneficial for you to be able to have access to that as well, to make your experience better and also get advice for investing or financial planning or whatever the case may be. So having all of those things available to you and letting you be in control of all this stuff, that's what I would perceive to be a great 403b plan. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about fees, how to figure out how much you're paying in fees, account access, surrender charges, all the things that make 403b plans pretty crappy, in my opinion. All right, so let's start with fees. So now, depending on what type of company you choose, your fees are going to look very different. So for example, if you choose a mutual fund company like Invesco, then they might have an upfront sales charge to purchase their mutual funds. So you could, for example, pay 5% every time that you go ahead and make a contribution. So if you put in $100 into the Invesco 403b, you might pay $5 right off the top to invest in that mutual fund. And then on top of that, the mutual fund itself is also going to have what's called an expense ratio. So they might charge you 1% a year in order to be in that mutual fund. And all mutual funds have different expense ratios. So you have to see for the funds that you're investing in what that actual expense ratio is for that fund. I mean, just to confuse things, not all mutual funds charge an upfront sales charge. They might have no upfront sales charge, and they might have a very small expense ratio like Vanguard funds. So if you have Vanguard available to you in your 403b plan at work, then you might have access to low-cost index funds where maybe the expense ratio is only 15 basis points. That's 0.15. And that's the only expense that you pay. There's no upfront sales charge. It's just that ongoing expense ratio, which is very small. So that would mirror more of like a 401k plan, a very good 401k plan that's out there. So it depends on what company you choose. And then if you were to invest in, let's say, an insurance company, if you went with a company like Voya or Equitable, then theirs looks very different. Then they have different products. They have annuities inside of the 403b plan. Now with annuity products, you might have many different fees and expenses, and it's hard to figure out what you're paying because they don't show up anywhere. They're not on your statement, and it's hard to see that you're actually paying that expense. So like one of them is called an M&E fee, or a mortality and expense risk fee. And with an annuity, that could be like 1.25% of your account value. And then above that, the funds themselves inside of the annuity, they're going to have expense ratios also. And those could be 1%, 1.25%. They could have a wide range depending on what type of fund it is. But altogether in that annuity, you might be paying 2.5% inside of your 403b account and not even know it, because it doesn't show the deduction of the fees coming out. They just spread it and take it from all the different mutual fund options without you even really knowing it. So above and beyond that, you could have like quarterly statement fees and admin fees, which might be, $30 a year or something along those lines. And those might show on the statements. But typically it's hard to figure out. You really have to do some digging, and you have to look at what's called the prospectus and see what is the M&E fee, what are the fund expenses fees. Like if you invest in one fund, it could be a target date retirement fund, and then it'll be easier to see because you could see that one target date retirement fund, maybe they charge 1% on that. So you know that you're paying an M&E fee of 1.25. Your target date fund is 1%. So you know altogether you're paying 2.25% to have your money in that 403b plan, which is high. You don't want to be paying 2.25%. In an ideal world, we would all have access to great low-cost funds where we're paying, under 30 basis points, right? 0.25%, 0.15. Those would be great plans where you have very low-cost options. And another thing that you want to realize and be very careful with is a lot of these annuity companies, annuity products, they have what's called a surrender charge. So once you sign up with them and you start putting money into that contract, it has to stay there for a certain number of years before you could get access to the money. And some of them are ridiculous. Like it could be a 10-year surrender charge, a 12-year surrender charge. And if you take your money out before then they hit you with these obscene penalties. So this could come into play if you enroll with one of them, you start putting money in, or maybe years go by and you've built up a good amount with them and you realize that they're charging you way too much in fees and you want to roll your money out and put it with a lower cost provider, then they're going to hit you with a very big penalty for whatever money is still subject to that surrender charge, that surrender schedule. So you want to look at that as well. But it's just another downside of these insurance products, these annuity products inside of the 403B accounts. So you could get handcuffed to where you can't really move your money out and you have to stay in there paying these high fees until your money comes out of that surrender period. And then you could also have companies that come with a financial advisor like Edward Jones or Ameriprise. There's a company called Aspire where you could actually go ahead and do a self-directed 403B that could be very low cost, where they do have Vanguard funds and Fidelity funds and a wide diverse variety of funds where you could set it up yourself. Or with Aspire, you could also partner with a financial advisor and they could do it for you. So there's so many options with all of these. It's just you want to really see, what are the expenses and what is the value that I'm getting. So I'm not saying it's terrible to work with a financial advisor. Like I help people through this as well. So having a financial advisor, you just want to see how much am I paying them and what is the value that I'm actually getting from them. So with all these different options in there, it could be very overwhelming, but you just want to make sure that you are making smart decisions and you're not just going with whoever's walking around the hallways or whoever your teacher that you're friends with is investing in, because you might be paying way too much. So you just want to be cognizant of that, because the expenses, they add up so tremendously over the course of your career. Like we're talking big numbers that you could be paying throughout a 30-year teaching career, where if you just make some other decisions along the way, you could have tremendously more inside of your 403B account. And now if you're in the district where you don't have any good options, you don't have any low cost providers in that district, it's time to start making some noise. You just don't deserve to be put in these very high cost plans just because there's nothing else that's available there. Your district could get other vendors to come in, other low cost vendors to be put on the platform. There's a variety of them out there now. So you got to start voicing your opinion and fighting for yourselves inside of these school districts. 403B Wise is a great resource. So the website, it's 403bwise.org, and they have a tremendous amount of resources and information on that website. That is a great place to start. They are big advocates for the K through 12 markets and trying to fix this broken 403B system that exists out there. All right, everyone, I hope that you found this helpful. Please make sure to hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed already, and I'll see you again in the next one. Thanks.